Welcome to Extended Disc and today's webinar. We want to provide some background for those of you who may not have met us yet. Extended Disc is an international assessment company with operations in almost 50 countries and 250 team members. Extended Disc offers internationally validated assessments that can be tailored to clients' unique needs and preferences. If you'd like to learn more, contact us on our website or follow us along any of our social media outlets. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and all registrants will receive a link to the recording, and it will also be posted on our YouTube channel. Use the Q&A section to ask us any questions you may have. If we are unable to answer them during our live session, we'll reach out to all registrants with the response. Thanks for joining us, and now here's the host of today's webinar. Extended Disc and today's webinar. Welcome to Extended Disc. Okay, hopefully that won't go anymore. So welcome everybody. Today is our webinar that is 30 minutes, and we will be talking about tips on how to debrief DISC results virtually. And some of these tips are the same whether you're one-on-one, over the phone, or in a virtual environment, but we'll be focusing in specifically when you are that virtual environment, maybe on a Zoom call or WebEx, whatever platform you might be using. And today, our hosts are myself, Amy Lipinski. I'm a senior trainer here at Extended Disc, and with me today is Christina Bowser, our training director. Hello, Christina.
Hello.
All right. So, in today's webinar, we want to provide some. I don't know
we
why.
have a beautiful intro that we created, and it just wants to over and over again. So, as you heard Amy say, the great news about debriefing DISC results virtually is it's not that different from how you do it normally, which I think most of us either do it in a classroom setting. Some of us are lucky enough to do it one-on-one, face-to-face in coaching. Some of us do it on the phone. Some of us do it by email. But as we all know, virtuals have been kind of the norm, and it's something that we will probably all continue doing. So Amy and I really wanted to spend a little time and offer some resources and tips on how you can debrief DISC assessments virtually, and also just kind of a good refresher for just how to debrief the report in general. It's not a bad thing to kind of remind ourselves how to do that. So why are they here? Sometimes as trainers, we forget to share the purpose of the training with our learners, with our participants, right? What's the end goal? And really with the extended DISC assessment, what we say is, number one, it's situational self-awareness. The purpose is to create the situational self-awareness and to kind of think about what behavioral action plans, what things we can put in place to get the end goal. The end goal is to be more productive and to be more successful. So it's always good to kind of state the purpose up front. We're not just giving you a DISC assessment, and a lot of times we think, oh, I'm taking the assessment and then endpoint, that's it. So we want them to think broader scope. Why they're here, why they are taking the DISC assessment. In terms of sending the report, again, most of the reports that come through Extended DISC typically go to the trainer or facilitator first, and then it's up to them to disseminate it. Now, there are different times where you might be doing it in a large group and you don't want to send out all those emails, or you're going to ask people to print out their reports ahead of time. Just a general tip, we prefer either to ideally sometimes hold on to the report and hand it out during the session, but in virtuals, that's not always as practical. But if you're going to send out the report ahead of time, we do recommend you send it out maybe just like a day or two. We don't want them to get overwhelmed by it. We just want them to take a nice glance at it so then we have opportunities to dialogue about it. Mark it up. The one thing we say, whether it's virtual, however you want to do present it, make sure that your participants think of it not just as a DISC report, but they think of it as a workbook, something that is dynamic, they can constantly revisit. I want them to put check marks, I want them to put question marks, I want them to dog ear, I want them to write notes everywhere. In part, it's not just they don't have to do it the first time through, but even as they're going through the debrief with you, I actually like to have people go along with their report and start to make those notations. So then they can go back and think about it again. It gives them time to process the information. Those check marks, we usually say check marks are great for totally agree with these results. Totally nailed me. This is me. Question marks? Let me think about this. I'm not sure I agree with these results, or I disagree with these results. What's great about marking it up is, number one, when they have the opportunity to debrief with you, they can start to share this type of feedback. Number two, and probably even more effective, we ask them to share those results with someone that trusts them. Multiple people that know them, so they can give them feedback, because ultimately what is this report? It is feedback for them. It's based on how they answered the questionnaire. So mark it up. Anything you would add so far, Amy? I'm just kind of rambling on.
That's okay. Yeah, with the marking it up, I also like having my clients do that because I feel also lets them know it's okay to disagree with statements in the report, right? Like you said, you want to definitely share it with someone to get additional feedback on that, but it gives them that opportunity to know that this is not necessarily in stone about who I am, right? It's okay to disagree with statements that may show up, being curious about them. I also think a little bit about that. Why are they here? As important as it is for us to remember to tell them the purpose, I also like finding out from my clients why they think they're there, right? Sometimes some of my participants come and they're like, I have no idea why I'm here. I was told to show up and here I am. I don't even know what this is, right? So, or sometimes they have a very clear, concise objective of what they want to get out of the session. So it just helps you as a facilitator and coach also prepare for that session based on why they think they're there, and reminding them this is a feedback tool. It's all about self-development, right? It's a developmental tool, and that's why we're here, is for their own personal self-development.
And I heard you use the word prepare, which kind of helped me flow into the second to last one, which is preparing your own adjustments. As DISC trainers, as I say it all the time, there's no other time or as important as it is when you're doing DISC facilitation is to practice what you teach. So give thought to your own style. How do you typically like to do your presentations? Are you someone who's fast paced? Are you someone that kind of likes to chit chat, or you're quieter? And then how is it going to match up with the person on the other end of your virtual? What the greatest thing is, you actually have insight into how they prefer to communicate with you. So go through the DISC results, look at their report. If they're an I style, build in a little more time to chat. If they're a more reserved style like S or C, you know that you need to kind of pause, let them process a little bit more, make sure that you give them opportunities to ask questions, answer in detail. And it's okay if it's a quieter session. Don't feel like you have to fill in that space. And then, of course, getting to know your technology. That's kind of one of the differences between how we may have traditionally debriefed reports versus how we do it now. I and Amy as well, with permission from the individual, we like to actually use the report as the presentation tool in the virtual. So pull it up, You don't have to go through it page by page. We have our own preferences. Even Amy and I, we don't always pick the same sections that we like to highlight. So think about which sections you'd like to highlight. Because what's great about the report is you don't have to cover every single section of the report. What we're trying to help the individual do is to give them the tools to be able to interpret their own results. Now, obviously, profiles are more challenging, and we have to talk a little bit about that. We have to talk about DISC profiles, but the majority of the report, where it talks about your strengths, where it talks about your motivators, et cetera, it is very intuitive. They're going to understand it once we kind of give them the impetus for why they're, as Amy said, why they are there, why are they reading about these results. Just suggestions when you're doing debriefs in terms of technology. Open everything up. You guys know we are not technology queens here. So we almost always preface it by saying something may go wrong and we apologize ahead of time. Be familiar, know where your screen share is. If they're less comfortable, sometimes you have multiple people, you know where your private chat is, so that they can, if you have a group of maybe 2 or 3 you're debriefing at the same time, do the private chat. Also, with technology, it usually takes longer than face-to-face, right? Because you don't have those nonverbal cues. You might have to explain things more in detail. You'll have to wait for them to kind of do the exercises. It's hard for you to gauge because you can't see everything that's in front of them. So I would say build in a little bit more time to debrief. Don't forget to use your chat, especially private chat when you need to. Anything else you can think of, Amy?
I think just tying into the last thing that you were talking about and knowing the technology, preparation is always important going into facilitating a session, right? And I think when we're facilitating or debriefing results virtually, preparation is even more important. And so all of these things will just take a little bit of extra time because we might have to email them certain documents that if we were in person, we would just hand out, right? So being able to prepare ahead of time, thinking through all of those things is really important in a virtual setting.
And then just a couple more things. I just want to add one more thing. So we highly, highly encourage you to use webcams. You guys know that's probably just a facilitation tip, but webcams really help you build that rapport. And especially if you have, the more people-oriented styles or, that kind of need some time to connect with you. That's use your webcam. Sometimes they forget or they will if you ask them. So be consciously aware of that. And then last thing I want to mention is just privacy. Even though we think of these as kind of just assessment tools to kind of help us, there's a lot of information that makes your client, maybe they're not as comfortable sharing yet, or maybe they haven't acknowledged these items about themselves that you're going to be talking about in the report. And some of us are working remotely, right? So, or we're working in cubicles, or we're working in areas where, family members are walking back and forth or colleagues. So just check with them to make sure that, they're okay with dialoguing in whatever space they're in.
Yeah, the reports can be a certain level of vulnerability, right? So having that safe place is important. So as we move into the actual debrief then, again, remember to apply DISC, right? Use the 4 steps to effective interactions. So everybody who knows me knows I always talk about how much I love our 4 steps to effective interactions. 2 reasons. It takes us from that awareness to application. And secondly, everything we do is founded on these 4 steps. So the reports themselves will follow these 4 steps to effective interactions. Do a quick review about how people are similar and different based on the 4-quadrant DISC model. Most of your time will be spent in debriefing their actual results, right? And as you talk about the results, make sure you focus on behaviors. Remember, everything in the report is about their energy, not their ability. There's no value judgment within DISC. So really hone in on the behaviors and what shows up and maybe what doesn't, right? Listen. sometimes that can be the most challenging part as a facilitator and coach. We get excited talking, and sometimes we forget to listen. But really listen to your clients, find out what they agree with, what they might disagree with, what questions they may have, where they might struggle, what types of obstacles or challenges they're facing in their current situation. And just listen and ask questions, right? Using those open-ended questions. And our job is always to guide them in their own interpretation of the data. So we want to present the data to them and help guide them into that interpretation. So a lot of it is encouraging them to be curious. Those are two of my favorite words when facilitating a debrief of the report. Be curious why how you responded would generate this statement. It's a statistical analysis of your self-evaluation. So being curious about the way in which you responded would generate that statement. It may be a blind spot that they might not have been aware of before. Remember, a lot of these statements in there are also based on how other people see someone with that DISC style. So they might not be aware of it. If they've never received feedback like this before, they might be shocked by some of it, right? So be curious about it. Guiding them to exploring the different possibilities. Think about the statement in different contexts. I always kind of joke, my reports always say I'm cold and distant. Not quite the words or adjectives you look to describe a human being, but I've realized that I'm always focused. And when I'm very focused, I don't notice what's going on around me. And that's how people can view me, as being cold and distant, right? So exploring those different possibilities. Like Christina had mentioned, giving the report to someone else. I love how people will come and say, you know what, that statement I disagreed with, I asked 5 other people and they all gave me examples this past week of how I've portrayed and demonstrated that behavior, right? So getting feedback from other people, sometimes they can just see aspects of our behavior so much more clearly than we can see it in ourselves. Maybe the statement used to be true. Remember, we're complex human beings. We've worked on things, right? If we've had feedback like this, we might have developed on that skill. The extended DISC isn't going to measure that we've gone to the gym and worked on that particular skill. It's measuring that hardwired behavior. So maybe it's something that used to be true, but we've worked on it now. So it's more of a learned behavior. So now when we look at that statement, we think that's not me. At the end of the day, if they really disagree with a statement, have them ignore it, right? Your clients know themselves the best. Have them do their due diligence, have them be curious, explore the possibilities of the statement, but don't let them go down that rabbit hole of nitpicking one word, one statement. Have them just disregard it. Remember, this is a starting point. Like Christina mentioned, the report is feedback. And so use the feedback you agree with and be curious about the other statements. And always, always tie it back into the purpose, right? Into their purpose, why they're there, the purpose of our 4 steps of moving us and using this feedback to learn how to have awareness so that we can make more strategic, better choices and decisions, all for that impetus of improving our interactions with other people. Tying it back into what's going to motivate their own particular style, right? Remembering what their style is and how making these adjustments and using this knowledge and awareness can help them reach their goals faster, with more rapport or relationships, or with security, with precision, whatever might be that motivator for their style, being able to connect it back into that as well as their purpose.
I think one of the we got a question, Amy, and I'm gonna do my best to answer it. And it is a wonderful question to ask, and it is basically we as trainers here at Extended Disc assume everybody everybody knows what the 4 steps to effective interactions are. Because if you've gone through pretty much any webinar, any training with us, we will hammer it home. So, what are the 4 steps to effective interactions? Great question. The 4 steps are basically a tool to help you as coaches and facilitators guide the process of disc learning with your participants. So step one is, what is this? How are we all on the same page when we're describing what a D style, an I style, an S style, and a C style are? Step two is that situational self-awareness that we talked about. It's understanding ourselves better. How do we do that? That's where we're actually functionally using the DISC report. What's great about step two is the extended DISC assessment actually builds on the 4 steps. So as you're kind of coaching through and debriefing the report itself, you're actually guiding the person through the first 4 steps. So, the first part of the report, let's do a brief introduction of DIS and C. Second part of the report, here is your DISC profile. Let's dialogue about some of your strengths and challenges and motivators. And then step 3 is one of the hallmarks of DISC, which is identifying the DISC styles of others. How do I practice not only thinking about how I show up, but what if I were able to kind of gauge, oh, that person might be a D style, or that person's definitely a people-oriented style. So step 3 is identifying the main DISC style of others. Step 4, which is the most critical piece, is the application piece. And that's, how do I take the information I understand about myself, kind of what I've gauged about the other person, and what do I do with it? How do I apply my DISC learning? And what's powerful in the DISC report, again, it guides you through, is there's actually suggestions and tips built into the report that if you, the person that report belongs to, were to make some of these adjustments and push yourself outside of your comfort zone, that you would be able to interact more effectively with other styles. So again, thank you for checking us. Those are the 4 basic steps. We definitely have more webinars if you're interested. And the best part of the report is that the report takes you and guides you through these 4 steps. Whether you actually acknowledge it or not, or whether your participants even know it or not, that's how the report is based. So hopefully that answered your question. And then, so with the, anytime you debrief, what we want to happen is we want it to be the start of their DISC learning and application and dialoguing and reflection. So we think of the DISC report really as your starting point. You heard me say use it as a workbook. If your job changes, your boss changes, your environment changes, you change. Maybe you've gone through some leadership training, or you've checked. It's been a couple years since you last checked your results. You can always go back and look at that DISC report because it is about who you truly are, your preferred ways of going about the day, your behavioral style. So remember that the coaching session is not just the end point. It's hopefully to jumpstart them, for them to be able to further understand and apply the results of their DISC report. Again, what's great about the DISC report is it has these built-in key questions and activities that help you develop what we call that behavioral action plan. We also have a communication strategy workbook, which, not to hammer it home anymore, but we love it because it is an activity that guides you through the 4 steps again. So thinking about what DIS and C are, thinking about your own style, and then it helps you identify the main DISC style of the other person. And then it has an activity where we call it the start, stop, and continue. What are some simple behavioral adjustments? And typically these adjustments are brief and they're temporary, but that if I were to start doing, I would have a better interaction with this person. What are some things I should consider stopping doing? And best of all, what are some things that have worked well for me? What are things that I should continue doing? So again, these are that this is a handout that is extended disc clients you have access to. Um, where do you use it? Should you send it out ahead of time? Can you attach it to your virtual where they can download it and then have it as homework? So we do have a lot of activities and exercises that are available for you, whether you're virtual or even face to face. We talk about the adjustment initiative. Um, we all have grown up with the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, you hit your brother, your mom says, do you want your brother to hit you? Probably not. But we know that in a business climate, it is not as efficient. And so we have what we call the adjustment initiative. Sometimes we call it the customer service rule, right? If you treat others the way they want to be treated and this supports you understanding how they may want to be treated, then you have a broader range of options that if you were to make these adjustments, it would be much more targeted and they would respond typically in a more successful way. And for those of you that are, like, let's go, this is going to take time, it actually gets you to the endpoint faster because how many of us have sent emails back and forth and going nowhere fast, or we're in a conversation, we're rolling our eyes going, why don't they understand what I have to say? So think about you're in control, think about you making the adjustments, and these are all things we are helping our participants practice and implement. Anything you'd add, Amy?
One thing I just wanted to add, I don't think you said it unless I missed it, but with our communication strategy worksheet, use that with the DISC report. They don't have to come up with a strategy on their own. It is in the report, right? The tips of do's and don'ts with interacting with different styles is listed there and are specific to the individual. So they don't have to think about it on their own about what they should maybe start, stop, or continue to do with that particular individual. They can use the report to get ideas. And then we also have another blog here that Christina had wrote about tips for debriefing DISC assessment. So you can go out onto our public website, extendeddisc.org, and click on the blog section and search for the tips for debriefing DISC assessments. And there are some additional tips kind of from a different angle, a different lens that might be helpful for you as well. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to remember, put it into practice, right? It's that consistent application. Our goal is to be comfortable with ourselves, to embrace who we are, and to make these slight modifications. They don't take long, they're temporary, they're brief. We're not trying to change anybody. We're looking to change behavior so that we are strategic in our approach so we get better results, better outcomes. So some of the things that you can encourage your clients to do, that we work with clients and ask them to do this, we do it ourselves, right? Maybe put a reminder in our phone, in our calendar. Today I did my best to. Focusing on what we do well, right? What worked for us? What did we do good? Where do we need to maybe recalibrate a little bit? It's okay to recalibrate, right? How often do we always need to recalibrate. Change is inevitable and it's always happening. And with change comes recalibration. So it's okay if maybe an adjustment didn't work. Recalibrate, think it through. Where did you miscalculate or misread their DISC style? Did you maybe need to try something different with them? Recalibrate. And then the last one kind of ties in with the worksheet a little bit, right? What adjustments could I make to improve my interactions with fill in the blank, right? Focus on one person a day maybe that you want to improve interactions with. And what could you adjust? How can you adjust to them? Because at the end of the day, we can't control or change other people. The only thing we can change and control is ourselves.
And then I just want one last thing to remember is sometimes when we are on virtuals, we are easily distracted. So one of the things Amy and I like to do is kind of set a mutual agreement up front. This is our expectations going into it, and then kind of check in with them what their expectations are. So that's just one last tip I'd like to leave you with. So we do have another webinar coming up next week. It's why don't people listen to me? I don't know why. As a parent, we probably all ask that question. So how can this help you be more effective by understanding how different styles prefer to listen? And that's a 15-minute webinar, April 7th, Central Standard Time at 3 p.m. So thank you all for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of the day.